Greetings to everyone across Africa and to all those who still believe this continent deserves the right to shape its own future. While many international headlines continue to describe Mali as a nation consumed by war and instability, another reality is quietly unfolding across the country. Villages that once survived without clean water are now receiving new boreholes. Communities damaged by years of insecurity are seeing food convoys return again. And a government many expected to fail is expanding social programs while still fighting terrorism. More than 500 water projects have already been completed under the leadership of General Assimi Goita. In Gifarabe, a city that suffered under terrorist blockade for nearly a year, military-escorted trucks carrying rice, oil, sugar, and milk finally reached exhausted residents. Mali is also launching digital employment platforms and nationwide sanitation campaigns. So the real question is no longer whether Mali faces conflict. The question is whether something much larger is taking shape inside the Sahel. Because in geopolitics, no crisis appears by accident. For years, much of the international media has described Mali using the same language: military rule, terrorism, instability, humanitarian crisis. Many of these problems are real. Mali still faces armed groups, economic pressure, and serious security threats. But the issue is that this often becomes the only image the world sees. Very few headlines focus on villages receiving clean water for the first time in years. Very few reports discuss rebuilding projects or employment programs. As a result, an entire nation becomes reduced to a single image of endless violence. And this is where the deeper issue begins. In today's world, controlling the story often means controlling global perception. The battle over Mali is not only happening on the battlefield, it is also happening through narratives, images, and international attention. For many families across Mali, clean water is not a simple convenience. It is survival. In several rural communities across the Sahel, women and children have spent years walking long distances every day just to collect unsafe water from rivers or shallow wells. During the dry season, entire villages can suffer from shortages that affect health, education, and daily life. That is why the expansion of more than 500 water projects under the current government has created such a strong emotional response across the country. Videos from villages in Mali often show residents celebrating around newly completed boreholes with singing, prayers, and tears of relief. To outside observers, it may seem like a small development project, but for local communities, it represents something much bigger. It represents the return of the state into forgotten areas. It sends a message that people living far from the capital have not been abandoned. This is also where the political strategy of General Assimi Goita becomes clearer. The government is not only trying to fight armed groups through military operations, it is also trying to rebuild trust among ordinary citizens. Because in long conflicts, governments do not lose only through weapons. They lose when people stop believing the nation still cares about them. In many ways, these water projects have become symbols of a larger idea. Security is not only about soldiers and checkpoints. Security is also about whether a child can drink clean water, whether families can survive difficult seasons, and whether communities still believe the future can improve. The city of Gifarabe became one of the strongest examples of how the conflict in Mali is not only about territory, but also about human survival. For nearly a year, the city lived under pressure from terrorist groups that disrupted transportation routes and blocked access to essential supplies. Food shortages became severe. Families struggled to find basic necessities. Fear and exhaustion slowly spread across the population. When military-escorted trucks carrying rice, sugar, oil, and milk finally entered the city, the reaction from residents was immediate. Crowds gathered in celebration. People shouted with relief. For many families, it was the first sign in months that they had not been forgotten. What happened in Gifarabe was important for another reason as well. Armed groups often try to weaken governments by targeting civilian morale. The objective is not only to attack soldiers, it is to convince ordinary people that the state can no longer protect or support them. Once trust collapses, instability grows much faster. That is why the operation carried symbolic weight far beyond humanitarian aid. Mali wanted to show that the government could still reach isolated communities even under extreme pressure. The message was clear. The state was still present. The nation was still fighting for its people. This is why the current conflict in Mali cannot be understood only through military statistics. The deeper battle is about legitimacy, confidence, and national unity. In conflicts like these, governments survive not only through force, but through the ability to maintain hope among the population. Mali is no longer acting alone. Together with Burkina Faso and Niger, the country has become part of a growing political and security alliance across the Sahel. These governments increasingly speak about sovereignty, self-reliance, and reducing dependence on foreign influence. For many supporters across Africa, this represents a major shift in regional politics. The creation of the Alliance of Sahel States was not simply a military decision, it was also a political message. The three countries are attempting to show that African states can coordinate security and development strategies outside older structures dominated by external power. This is one reason the situation in Mali attracts so much international attention. Western governments and media outlets have often criticized the current authorities in Mali. Concerns about democracy, human rights, and political transition continue to generate debate. Mali also still faces real security challenges, economic pressure, and instability in several regions. These realities cannot be ignored. But many Africans are also asking another question. Why do international discussions focus almost entirely on conflict while giving far less attention to water projects, food assistance, sanitation campaigns, or digital employment programs? This is where the deeper geopolitical struggle becomes visible. The debate surrounding Mali is not only about terrorism or elections, it is also about who gets to shape Africa's image in the modern world. Because if a continent is constantly described only through crisis and failure, people eventually begin to believe that instability is its natural condition. While much of the world continues to focus on conflict inside Mali, the government is also trying to prepare for life beyond war. One example is the launch of new digital employment platforms designed to connect workers, employers, and young job seekers through mobile technology. In a country facing insecurity and economic pressure, this may appear like a small step, but politically, it carries important meaning. A government focused only on survival would not invest energy into employment databases, digital job access, or long-term workforce planning. Mali appears to be sending a different message. The country is trying to show that rebuilding national stability also means preparing opportunities for the next generation. This matters because the future of Mali may depend as much on economic hope as on military success. A generation without jobs, education, or direction can easily become vulnerable to frustration, migration, or recruitment by armed groups. That is why development and security are becoming increasingly connected across the Sahel. In the coming years, Mali could move in several directions. The first possibility is gradual stabilization through continued social investment and stronger national unity. The second is growing pressure from insecurity and economic isolation. And the third possibility is that Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger continue strengthening their alliance and reshape regional politics in West Africa. What we are witnessing is therefore much larger than one government or one conflict. Mali has become part of a wider debate about whether African nations can defend themselves while also rebuilding their societies on their own terms. A single borehole may seem small in the eyes of the world, but sometimes a simple source of clean water says more about leadership than 100 political speeches. In the days ahead, attention will remain fixed on Mali and the wider Sahel, not only to see what happens next, but to understand what kind of future Africa may be trying to build for itself. Follow this channel if you want to understand Africa through the eyes of Africa itself. History does not stand with the strongest. It stands with those who understand the rules of the game